Hey, before we begin, take a deep breath with me. In, hold, and out. You're here now. That's enough. If no one has told you today, I'm glad you're here. And if you haven't heard it in a while, you matter more than you think. You don't need to be fixed. You're not broken machinery. You're not a problem to be solved. What you need is to be heard. Truly heard. Not just listened to politely while someone's mind is somewhere else. Not just nodded at until they can speak again. I mean heard in the way the ocean hears the shore. In the way the night hears your heartbeat when you can't sleep. In the way a friend hears the tremble in your "I'm fine" and knows you're not. But somewhere along the way, people convinced you otherwise. Maybe they said you were too sensitive. Maybe they called you dramatic. Maybe they told you to toughen up. And so, you learned to tuck your feelings into the smallest spaces you could find. You started treating your own voice like an inconvenience. You began fixing yourself before anyone else could see the cracks. But here's the truth. Those cracks? They're not evidence of weakness. They're the proof you've survived. Someone once wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Rumi. And maybe your wounds aren't there to be erased, but to remind you of the light you've carried through the darkness. So tonight, let's not talk about how to fix you. Let's talk about how to find the people who will hear you. The ones who won't rush to give advice, or judge, or explain your feelings away. The ones who will sit in your silence with you, and let that be enough. You see, when someone really hears you, they're not just taking in your words. They're receiving your pauses, your sighs, the little hesitations between your sentences. They notice when your voice changes on certain words. They catch the way your eyes shift when you speak of certain people. They feel the weight behind the things you don't say. That's the difference between listening and hearing. Listening can be done with half a heart, but hearing requires all of it. And maybe that's why you've been so tired. Because you've been offering your truth to people who only had room for half of it. They took the pieces that fit their understanding and left the rest scattered inside you, making you feel unfinished. So you kept trying to make yourself smaller, more palatable, easier to digest. You learned to translate your pain into something quieter, less likely to scare them away. But the truth is, love that asks you to shrink isn't love at all. Real love says, speak in your own language, even if I don't understand it yet. Cry as loud as you need. I'm not leaving. Be messy, be confusing, be human. I can hold it. That's what you deserve. Not someone who rushes to fix you, but someone who knows that your healing doesn't happen in their hands. It happens in your own time, in your own way. And if you've never had that before, I want to be clear. It's not because you're too much. It's because the people around you didn't have the capacity. And that's about them, not you. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep or overwork. It comes from years of not being understood. It's the tired that settles in your bones after explaining yourself over and over, only to be met with blank stares, or worse, a quick change of subject. And maybe you've started believing the lie that no one can ever truly get you, that your feelings are too strange, too heavy, too inconvenient. So you start storing them away like fragile glass, placing each one carefully on a hidden shelf, telling yourself you'll deal with them later. But feelings aren't meant to be stored. They're meant to be shared. Not with everyone, but with someone safe. And here's the thing about being heard. It's not just about relief. It's about recognition. It's about the moment someone looks at you and says, "I believe you. I feel it too. You're not wrong for feeling this way." That's when the armor you've been wearing starts to feel just a little lighter. That's when the air in your chest moves a little more freely. We don't heal in isolation. We heal in connection. But connection doesn't happen when people are trying to fix you into the version of you they prefer. It happens when they stand beside you in the version you already are. So if you're listening to this right now, maybe this is your reminder. You are not a project. You are a person. And people are meant to be loved, not repaired. Think about it. When was the last time someone truly asked you, "How are you?" and actually wanted the real answer? Not the polite, "I'm fine." Not the practiced smile you give in public, but the answer that sits in your throat like a lump you can't swallow. We live in a world that celebrates the strong, the unshaken, the ones who bounce back quickly. But what about the ones who are still on the ground? What about the ones who are tired of bouncing? Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is not to stand back up immediately, but to let yourself be still, to feel the ache in your chest without rushing to cover it up. And if someone is beside you in that stillness, without telling you to get over it, or be positive, or look on the bright side, then you've found something rare. Because most people confuse discomfort with danger. They think your pain is a problem to solve, instead of a truth to witness. But the right ones, they'll know your pain isn't contagious. They'll sit with it. They'll sit with you. And in that silence, something shifts. You realize you don't need them to fix the silence. You just need them to share it. That's what being heard really feels like. It's the safety of not needing to translate yourself. It's the relief of not being too much for the room you're in. It's knowing you can speak your rawest thoughts and still have someone choose to stay. Maybe you've learned to hold yourself together in public, saving the unraveling for when no one's around. You smile when people ask about your life. You give them the edited version, the highlight reel. Because somewhere along the way, you realize that the full truth makes people uncomfortable. And maybe you're tired of watching faces change when you open your heart. Tired of hearing advice when all you needed was a listening ear. Here's the thing. When someone rushes to fix you, they're not really seeing you. They're seeing their own discomfort and trying to make it go away. But the people who matter, the ones who are worth keeping, they know that your feelings aren't problems. They're proof that you're alive. They won't tell you to calm down when you're crying. They won't tell you to move on when you're grieving. They won't tell you, "It's not that bad," when to you, it feels like the end of the world. Instead, they'll let you feel the storm. They'll hold an umbrella over your head without rushing the clouds away. And when the rain finally stops, you'll realize something beautiful. You didn't need someone to pull you out of the storm. You just needed someone to walk through it with you. That's what it means to be heard. That's what it means to be seen. And once you've experienced that, you'll never again mistake fixing for loving. There's a quiet kind of loneliness that follows you even in a crowded room. It's not about how many people are around you. It's about how many of them can truly hear you. You've laughed at jokes you didn't find funny just to keep the peace. You've nodded along to conversations that had nothing to do with your truth. You've swallowed words that burned in your chest because you knew they wouldn't be understood. And slowly, you started disappearing. Not all at once, but piece by piece. First, you stopped telling certain stories. Then, you stopped sharing certain thoughts. Eventually, you stopped reaching out at all. This is what happens when you spend too long in spaces where you have to shrink yourself to fit. But here's what I want you to remember. The right people will never ask you to shrink. They will give you space to expand. They will lean in when you speak, as if your words are worth their full attention. Because they are. And when you find that, it feels like breathing fresh air after years underground. It feels like sunlight touching parts of you that have been cold for too long. You realize you haven't been too much this whole time. You've simply been in places that were too small for you. One day, you will speak without fear of being misunderstood. Not because you've become better at explaining yourself, but because you'll finally be surrounded by people who are fluent in the language of your heart. They won't just listen to your words. They'll hear the pauses, the cracks in your voice, the tremble you try to hide. They'll understand that silence can speak louder than a scream. And sometimes, the most loving thing they can do is to sit with you in that silence. You'll notice how safe it feels when someone doesn't rush to fill the quiet. They just let it be. They let you be. And in that stillness, your guard will slowly fall away. The parts of you that have been hiding for years will stretch their limbs like they've just woken from a long sleep. You'll tell them the story you've never told anyone. And when you finish, they won't tell you what you should have done. They won't dissect your choices. They'll just say, "I'm glad you told me." Because to them, your trust is the most valuable thing you could ever give. And in that moment, you'll realize something life-changing. You were never too broken to be heard. You were simply waiting for the right ears. So here's what I want you to take with you tonight. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need someone to rearrange the pieces of you until they fit their idea of perfect. You need to be heard, truly heard, acknowledged, seen. Because when someone hears you without judgment, without trying to solve you, without telling you to be different, something incredible happens. You start to trust yourself again. You start to trust that your feelings are valid, that your voice matters, that your presence is enough. And slowly, the world starts to feel a little less heavy. The silence in your chest becomes a space for reflection, for growth, for self-love. If you've been carrying the weight of being too much or not enough, let this episode remind you, your story is enough. Your emotions are enough. You are enough. Thank you for allowing me to share this time with you. If this episode resonated, consider subscribing and joining our journey, because there are more whispers waiting, more stories that remind you you're not alone, and that being heard is one of the greatest gifts you can receive and give. Now, take a few moments to sit quietly. Let the music fill the spaces we couldn't with words, and just breathe.
you.